Have you ever felt like life's busyness has dulled your sense of wonder? In this episode, we're rediscovering the awe that transforms our faith and brings meaning to everyday moments. We'll explore how reconnecting with wonder in nature, art, travel, and through the eyes of children can shift our perspective, boost our mental health, and deepen our connection with God. Welcome to Midlife Repurposed. If you're craving inspiration, practical tips, and a renewed sense of purpose, you're in the right place. Here, we embrace the messy, uncertain, and sometimes downright challenging turns of midlife with a dose of humor and an unwavering belief that there's treasure to be found even in the tough stuff. I'm your host, Michelle Rayburn, an author who's passionate about uncovering hope in the most unexpected places. Let's repurpose this season of life together. If you're anything like me, you've probably noticed how easy it is to get caught up in the hustle of daily responsibilities, balancing work, family, social commitments, and everything in between. It can feel like there's no room left for wonder or moments that take our breath away. But what if I told you that tapping into wonder, slowing down to appreciate awe, is exactly what makes life more meaningful in midlife? Today, we're going to explore how to rekindle that sense of wonder and see God's fingerprints in our everyday lives. Sometimes I have to escape to see that, and I love going to the North Shore of Lake Superior. My husband and I have done 2 trips up there this fall. We're looking forward to doing some in the spring. The snow season is starting, and so we're not probably going to be traveling up there, but I love listening to the waves. And one of the things that one of our favorite places has is a wave camera that we can log into and just see what the waves look like on any given day. Now, it's not a high quality video or anything. I can sort of hear the waves. Today, I could hear rain falling when I listened to it, but it just brings me back to that place and reminds me of just how beautiful it is when we're there on a beautiful sunny day with the waves rolling in on Lake Superior. So let's talk today about what wonder actually is. Think back to when you were a child. Everything was new and fascinating. I love watching my grandkids because everything is new and fascinating for them. Remember the first time you watched fireflies dance on a summer evening, or when you stood in awe of a rainbow stretching across the sky? As adults, we often dismiss those moments. We think of them as kid stuff. We're busy. We have serious things to attend to, right? I remember actually just a few months ago seeing the Northern Lights for the first time with the naked eye, and it was glorious. We stood outside just gazing up at the sky, and it was just one of those moments that brought me back to childhood and that wonder that I experienced when I saw something for the first time. But here's the thing. Reconnecting with that sense of awe and amazement can transform our outlook on life. So we need to pursue that. We need to pursue the wonder. How can we do this amid busy lives? Well, one way is through travel. Like I said, I go up to the shore of Lake Superior. I love to go out to California and visit family there and see the ocean. I love to fly in an airplane over the mountains. It's just amazing. I've not gone overseas, like to another country, but my husband has done that. So I'm not talking, though, about grand adventures overseas and spending tons of money. I'm not even talking about traveling in an airplane. What about a weekend drive just to something in your neighborhood, something 30 minutes from home, maybe an hour from home? Even those little drives can open our eyes to different sights. We see different cultures around us, different communities. It's not the same as ours. I can drive just 30 or 40 minutes from where I am right now and get into an Amish and Mennonite area, and the culture is different there. The farms look different. Some of the places are so beautifully manicured, the way the houses have hanging baskets of flowers and that kind of thing. And there are young people on bicycles driving from one home to another. There are cows grazing. And so it's a cultural experience for me to see that. So I want you to think, have you ever traveled somewhere driven to church, gone for coffee somewhere, and you're looking at the beauty around you. Maybe it's the sun coming up or going down. Maybe it's the fog over a river. So I encourage you to see that wonder at work and to see that as God's gift to us. It's His work. It's what He's gifting to us. Nature just has a way of stirring our souls, doesn't it? A walk in the woods or sitting by a lake can make us pause and reflect. It's no coincidence that Jesus often taught outdoors. The natural world points us to a creator who delights in beauty and intricate detail. When we relearn to pause and pay attention to the sunset, the rustling of leaves, or the bird song that we hear, it can lead to a renewed sense of reverence for God. And for me, that pause helps me to tune out the noise of all of the things that stress me. I have moments where social media overwhelms, reading the news headlines overwhelms. And then if I pause and I withdraw, it brings me back to that renewed sense of reverence and the reminder that God is in control. What about art? Whether it's visiting a gallery or listening to a moving piece of music or even creating something with our own hands, art opens us up to beauty and expression. I've been listening to a band online. You have your own that you like. I have ones that I like, but I was on Apple Music and I was just listening to a new album. And then I went back to look at some of the older albums that this group had put out. And there's so much music and I listen and it's just, I love there's a mix of choral voices and orchestration and rock music and strange things all woven together in a beautiful art. And that music stirs me in a way. And I put it on as I went for a drive with my husband because there's something about those instrumentals and seeing the beauty of creation that this art of music is merging with the art of creation. And so I love doing that. It helps us to see the world differently with new eyes when we are looking at something that has been created with hands or created by God. So I remember looking at an art exhibit and just wandering around in Minneapolis at a big art gallery and seeing all the different forms of art expression and how that just reminds us of the creativity that God has put inside of us. And it stills the chaos of life because even though it is art that has been created with human hands, it reminds me that God has instilled the artist with that creative ability. And so it just reminds me of how much He cares about all that creative stuff. Like one person imagines one thing and another imagines another. And it's just amazing how unique each one of us is created. One of the simplest and most profound ways that we can reconnect with awe is through the eyes of children and grandchildren. So I've talked about the wonder that we see through the eyes of a child. Think about watching a child discover something for the first time. There's this joy and this curiosity in their eyes. And they don't have the cynicism that we have. They don't have the fatigue that we have over all of the things that adults have going through our minds. And I think this is why Jesus told His followers to have faith like a child. There's this purity to their awe that we need to reclaim. And when we were up north with all of our kids and all of our grandchildren recently, it was fun to watch them play because they imagine and they create. It was fun to take them on a hike to one of my favorite places and hear them talk about the rocks and throwing the rocks back into the big lake and just experiencing that through the eyes of a child. When we're intentional about making room for wonder and awe in our lives, we find ourselves more grounded and more grateful. Wonder shifts our focus away from what we lack or the things that stress us out, and it helps us to notice God's goodness and His grace around us. When we become more present, we are more in tune then with what truly matters. So it's the invitation that we have every day to pause, to breathe deeply, to rediscover wonder in our everyday lives. And it means that we're looking for God's fingerprints, whether it's in the petals of a flower or a powerful story we hear or a smile shared with a stranger or a smile shared because we read something funny in a book. Wonder reminds us that we're part of a bigger and more beautiful story than we can imagine. Now, as we think about pausing to rediscover, why is it so important? And why is it important in midlife? Well, this is a time where we're kind of in a transition where mental health becomes a challenge. We are experiencing the daily reminders of our own humanness. It might be in the aches and pains, it might be in the fact that we're potentially popping blood pressure pills and having to think about wellness in a different way because our bodies don't always cooperate with the way they used to. I don't have the physical stamina to do the things that I used to do. And we're also faced with our parents as they age and all of the responsibilities that come with that. And so there's a lot of things in midlife that come with unique challenges. There are also still career pressures. Some of us are not even close to retiring. And so we're still trying to figure out how we're paying the bills until we get to that point. And then, like I said, the caregiving responsibilities and perhaps even some questioning of purpose. So, in the middle of all of this, wonder can be a powerful antidote to the challenges that we face. It can offer stress reduction. So, when we pause to look at nature and experience art, in the spiritual moments, art can be worship when we're together on a Sunday morning. And it's this act of noticing, and it shifts us out of a stress-driven mindset. It activates this place in our nervous system that helps us to relax and reduces the cortisol levels, and it brings us to a calmer state of focus. So that also helps us to pause to appreciate because we're looking at something beautiful or awe-inspiring, and it draws us into the present moment. And this can break the cycle of ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. And so it's kind of a mindfulness. It brings our mind into focus with what God's looking at in the world and takes us away from the anxiety of feeling like it's all on our shoulders. It shifts our perspective, really, and it helps us to move away from personal struggles and daily frustrations and put things into context. And for me, it helps me to reduce that feeling of overwhelm when I can pull away and just be in nature. It also helps to boost my gratitude. Whenever I experience wonder, I feel this natural sense of gratitude. It's like I just can't help but close my eyes and just feel this sense that God is so present and he has created something beautiful. He didn't have to make the world that way. It could have been so utilitarian, and instead it's so beautiful and full of variety. And then what happens with that is it really stimulates creativity and joy. And so when we rediscover wonder and it rekindles our curiosity, ultimately it affects our passion for life. We have this sense of exploration, and that joy can really help us combat all the stagnation that might happen in midlife. It can spark new creative thinking, maybe new hobbies, maybe pursuit of meaningful goals, and give us some direction, maybe on the places where we have questions about our future and our purpose. Rediscovering wonder and awe can significantly grow our faith as well by deepening our sense of connection to God. It really is humbling to stand on the shores of something like the ocean or Lake Superior or anything like that and look at how large the world is. It humbles me to just see how big God is. And it shows me just how much mystery there is to him, how much I don't know. And it brings me to a place of that surrender of saying, it's huge and I don't understand it, but I'm thankful that God does. Whenever we're in nature, we can revel in God's presence, admiring the beauty, marveling at the complexity, and feeling deeply moved. We're often reminded that there's something greater at work. And these moments are what draws me closer to God because I see his fingerprints everywhere. I'd love for you to just pause when you have a chance today to think about where you have opportunities to revel in God's presence and where he reveals himself in those moments. As you do that, I encourage you to think about deepening that sense of gratitude because experiencing awe naturally draws us into worship. And when we're captivated by something magnificent like a mountain range, an unexpected moment where something stirs up in us, we have this desire to express the gratitude and a desire to praise. And oftentimes something gets in the way of that. Maybe it's that we're embarrassed, or maybe it's that we're just distracted by the things going on around us. It feels unnatural because we haven't really just let go in a while. And so I catch myself sometimes in church when we're singing songs about raising our hands in total surrender. And I'm like, I'm not doing this right now. I'm not feeling this. But I do sometimes when I get outside of people, outside of crowds of people, and I'm just there in God's presence, I express myself in a different way because the inhibitions are gone. And so that's why getting away and getting out in nature for me is exceptionally meaningful. Not everybody has that kind of inhibition, so we're all created differently. But sometimes it's just that it prompts us to ask bigger questions about life, bigger questions about purpose, really grows the curiosity and leads us into a deeper faith. Maybe spending some time reveling in beauty takes you from this surface level and you get into more of a reflective mode. And that encourages us to seek God more fully. And then we wrestle with the mysteries that really go beyond our human understanding. So when we get to know God more intimately, it deepens our faith. It grows those roots deeper. And when we look at nature around us, it's a representation of what happens when we are rooted in God. Lastly, one of the beautiful things about experiencing awe and wonder is that it reinforces our sense of belonging in God's story. You know, there's always a warning that Bible teachers will issue to remember that the Bible is not our story, it's God's story. And sometimes we jump to wanting to find ourselves in that story. And yet I'm a little more willing to say, maybe we sometimes turn off the fact that we do belong in God's story, that He put us here for a purpose. He created us. And when we experience awe, it's not saying that we belong in the story, like we're not the saviors of the world that way, but we're experiencing something much grander than ourselves. And it almost, when we insert ourselves in and see where we are in creation, it reminds us that it aligns with this biblical narrative that we are created and loved and purposed by Him. It's His story, but we aren't just randomly there. We are children of God. And so when we see ourselves as children of God and in that family, and we see that His hand is on everything and that He's even created awe in nature for us to be reminded of Him, then it strengthens our desire to walk in faith. And so rather than just turning off our emotions and trying to keep ourselves from, getting overly worried about whether I'm trying to insert myself in God's story, I'm just going to claim the fact that He loves me and that He created me with a purpose, and that means I am still part of His story. When we cultivate wonder and awe, then it opens our minds to the fullness of who God is. It deepens our worship, strengthens our trust, and it encourages us to seek Him in all areas of life. When we rediscover that in the middle of our busy and routine-filled lives, it's more than just a fleeting experience. It's an invitation to deepen our faith and to nurture our mental health, to connect and reconnect with what truly matters. By intentionally seeking moments of awe in nature, in art, in your everyday, in the interactions you have with people, through the eyes of your children and your grandchildren, it allows us all to be transformed. We gain that perspective and the gratitude and the renewed purpose. And that is midlife repurposed. Wonder reminds us that we can point back to the Creator who orchestrates it all. And as we go about our days, we open our hearts to being amazed. We know that these moments ground us and heal us and strengthen our faith journey. So your homework for today is to go out and experience wonder and awe somewhere, in art or in nature. And then I want to hear about it. Send me an email, drop me a line on Substack. I really want to know where God showed up and awed you this week. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Midlife Repurposed. Looking for more inspiration and connection? Dive into Midlife Repurposed on Substack, where you'll find resources, weekly reflections, and a community of like-minded women. Visit midliferepurposed.com to to join the conversation and keep the journey going.